All right, I think that's about it for the Strand Theater. We'll mosey down a little bit further to the next theater, and we don't have to go far because it's basically right across the street, just a couple doors down. And most of you know where this is today, and this is the Exquisite Corpse Coffee House. But at one time, it was a theater, the Arcade Theater. We don't have a photograph of when it was a theater, but it would look very much like this. The building didn't change probably in 100 years, and it still looks pretty much the same today, except the top of it was a little fancier. Here's a photograph of when it was Farron Shoe Store, and you can see the crown at the top. We do have a photograph, however, of the signage out front of the Arcade Theater, and you can see it in this photo here. The theater opened August 15, 1907, and this is what it had to say about it in the paper. Opening of new arcade was a success in every way. Show made a hit. At the new Arcade Theater will prove a bonanza was shown last evening, when fully 600 people witnessed the opening of the exhibit. The moving pictures were especially good, and the illustrated songs certainly made a hit. The theater itself is one of the most beautiful of its kind, and is fitted up in fine style. The interior is colored in red, white, and green, and the stage is miniature in size, can compare as to beauty with any in this part of the state. The entrance to the theater presents a fine appearance. Captain Slyfield, manager of the arcade, runs a theater similar to this one in Sarnia, which was attended by 1,600 people last evening. And this ad says how much it cost. 1 nickel. And according to this, it was doing pretty well. Here are some of the things that played at the Arcade Theater. Projection booth fires were not uncommon in the early decades of cinema if a film managed to be exposed to too much heat while passing through the projector's film gate, and several incidents of this type resulted in audience death by flame, smoke, or the resulting stampede. Fortunately, none of those things happened to Port Huron, but there was a projection room fire at the Ritz Theater as well. This article was interesting to me because the name sounded familiar. Someplace in my travels I ran across this name before, so I went through my files and sure enough I found it. This is a little older picture of George McComb, but he must have come back to Port Huron and became the director of both the First Baptist Church and the St. Stephen Catholic choirs. He also found time to compose and perform popular tunes, and it seems like he still had his foot in the door at the Arcade Theater. The Arcade Theater closed in April of 1914, and a clothing store went in there by the name of Michigan Cloak and Shoe Company. All right, I think that takes care of the Arcade Theater. Let's just go around the block and go to our next theater. The next theater is on 3rd Street and on the corner of 3rd Street and Water Street. Now let's go down a little bit further to get a better look at it. Now that's 3rd Street that goes right across there. And then right in this area here, this is where the Edison Theater was. This is the only picture I've ever seen of the Edison Theater. I've never seen an actual photograph, and I believe this is probably the architectural drawing of it. This wasn't a brand new building that was built for the Edison Theater. They remodeled an existing building that was already there, and this used to be the old Campbell Mill. In this newspaper, dated June 28, 1902, you see a picture of the Edison Theater along with three men's pictures. Two of the men are investors in the Edison Theater. The other man is who it's named for, Thomas Edison. And I'll let you read this yourself, but I'll read the first paragraph. Port Huron's Ground Theater has become an established fact. Arthur L. McCormick and Bert D. Cady have closed negotiations for the Campbell's property, and the work of remodeling is now in progress. The new house will seat 12 to 1,500 and will have a stage capacity capable of accommodating any attraction that is on the road. It will be one of the best equipped playhouses in the state. The booking will be done by Jepson and McCormick at their office in New York, and they will know the merits of the attraction before it is presented to Port Huron. In this newspaper clipping talking about the opening of the Edison Theater, it says this: Society event, opening of Edison Theater will be one. Blanche Welch, one of the best-known American actresses. One of the most spectacular attractions on the road this year will be the presentation of the Edison Theater Company at the opening of the new house in this city on Friday evening, December 26, when Blanche Welch, one of the best-known actresses on the American stage today, will present The Daughter of Hamelin. It requires 67 people and 4 carloads of scenery to stage this elaborate attraction. It goes on to talk about the inside, what the inside of the Edison Theater looked like. The interior is now being handsomely decorated in ivory, gold, and red, and the electrical effects will be a feature of the new theater. Altogether, it will be one of the coziest houses in this section of the country, and no effort will be spared to bring to this city the best attractions on the road. The young men who have built this pretty theater should have the support of the public. Port Huron people have long demanded a ground floor theater for safety and comfort. The new structure can be emptied in 1/2 minute, there being 8 large exits. A couple things I took away from this is that the people were glad to have a ground floor theater. When this theater opened, there were 2 other theaters. There was the City Opera House and the Harder Opera House. Both of them you had to walk up flights of stairs to get in. The other thing I took away, people were nervous about fires in theaters. There were a lot of them around the country, a lot of loss of life. And the fact that you had 8 exits and could get out in 1/2 minute, I'm sure was very attractive to some people. This page you've been looking at is from a San Francisco paper, and it's talking about Blanche Welch and her lover and how he's stalking her and she's afraid of him getting a court order. He wants to be her slave. Anyway, it's not worth a read, but there's some good pictures over here. They didn't say anything in the previous articles about having their own orchestra, but they must have had one because A.V. Smith was the leader of the Edison Theater Orchestra, and he was given pupils violin lessons. Opening day finally came, and this was the front page of the Daily Herald on December 26, 1902. Opening of the new Edison Theater will take place this evening. The thing I found interesting about this article is who had the box seats. Some pretty important people. There is Mayor Moore, Senator Moore and party, Mrs. Poyer and party, Congressman McMorrin and party, W.L. Jenks and party, L.A. Sherman and party, William Cahan and party. The movers and shakers of Port Huron. Blanche Welch was supposed to be a one-night performance just for the opening, but judging from this article, there was a great number of people that wanted to be there for the opening but couldn't get tickets, and so they kept her over another night. And the second night was just as successful as the first night, it would appear. And this ad that they ran for the second night, it gives you an idea of what the prices were. Here we have a very old photograph. The first time I've ever seen this photograph. I found it in one of the papers. And it shows Port Huron, this area where Water Street goes up here. Black River is here. And you can see the electric light company plant right here. This is the first one. This one actually burned down and was replaced with a brick one. Over here you can see the swinging bridge. That was a Pierre Marquette Railroad Bridge. You can see a freighter here, and it's pulled up alongside. It looks like the Cameron. Cameron had a yard there for building supplies, and that's what that is. It isn't a real great picture, but it certainly is a historical picture. And then over here, you can see part of the roundhouse for the Pierre Marquette Railroad. You can see a ferry coming up Black River. You see a couple of them docked up here. And then right up Water Street, where it makes it go off on an angle there, that's 3rd Street. And that's where the Edison Theater is. Now, it may have been the Edison Theater then, or it may have been the Campbell Company then. More likely the Campbell Company, but it would have been the same building. So I thought I'd throw this in at no extra charge. Alright, that's all I have on the Edison Theater. So let's get in our Google Mobile and head up Water Street to the next theater, which is just across Military Street. We come right into this area here, just about, right about where this entrance is here. There was a building that used to be the Bijou Theater. Now I know most of you are saying, well, the Bijou Theater was on Grand River, and it was, but that was much later on. As far as our generation is concerned, I think a lot of us will remember that the old Citizens Federal Building that was there right next to the new one, that's where the theater was. And this picture here shows it pretty clearly. This was when they were tearing everything down, and that's what was left. This is the same building that used to be the Harder Opera House. You can see that Citizens Federal rejuvenated the front a little bit, but this is what it used to look like here in this photograph. This building was built by Christian Harder, who among other interests operated a grist mill on the south side of Quay Street. And this was in 1872. This building housed several things, just like I told you the City Opera House did as well. During the course of this building's existence, it's housed the Opera House, of course, the Armory for the Port Huron Guards, Labor Temple offices, a saloon, photography, gallery, and a number of other retail establishments, as well as a billiard parlor, which you can see in this photograph. It was also the home of the first YMCA. I bet you didn't know that, did you? The foundation of this building was built of rough, uncut stone quarried near Grindstone City, and then it was shipped to Port Huron by boat. Here's what the Port Huron Daily Times said about the grand opening of the Harder Opera House. Free exhibition of his skill as a funambulist. Now, what is a funambulist? Somebody having fun, I would assume, so I looked it up. I'm not real skilled in my languages, so I checked it out, and come to find out, it means tightrope walker, not somebody having fun. And it's also pronounced differently than I was saying it. It should be funambulist. Well, go figure. I should have just read the fine print below. Crossing from the hall to the building opposite at 7:30 o'clock. I can just see the crowds now down there on the sidewalks beside Water Street, ooh and ah, being amazed. I had some of the finest acts in the country to come here, but they also did local things as well. In this particular case, it was the German Aid Society. But one of the performers that was the most talked about in the city was a young man who was entertained and honored by such national and international persons as President Lincoln, Queen Victoria, Napoleon III, the Empress Eugenie, and William I of Germany. His name was Charles Sherwood Stratton, but you may remember him better as General Tom Thumb. He was a dwarf who achieved great fame as a performer under circus pioneer P.T. Barnum. Charles was a relatively large baby, weighing 9 pounds 8 ounces at birth. He developed and grew normally for the first 6 months of his life, at which point he was 25 inches tall and weighed 15 pounds. Then he suddenly stopped growing. When he was 4 years old, Stratton had grown only 1 inch from when he was 6 months old. Apart from this, he was a completely normal, healthy child, with several siblings who were of average size. His body was proportionate and functional. Phineas T. Barnum, a distant relative, heard about Stratton and after contacting his parents, taught the boy how to sing, dance, and impersonate famous people. Stratton made his first tour of America at the age of 5 with routines that included impersonated characters such as Cupid and Napoleon, as well as singing, dancing, and comical banter with other performers who acted as straight men. It was a huge success and the tour expanded. His marriage in 1863 to a little person, Lavinia Warren, became front-page news. The wedding took place at Grace Episcopal Church, and the wedding reception was held at New York City Metropolitan Hotel. The couple stood atop a grand piano at the reception to greet some 10,000 guests. The bridesmaid was the bride's sister, and the best man was the groom's friend. The wedding boom indeed was an enterprise very successful. I think this was all part of Barnum's plan. The next plan to increase their fame further would be the addition of a child, and Barnum was, as ever, happy to fix this. He rented babies from foundling hospitals for photo shoots and personal appearances, and the crowds went crazy. When that idea had run its course, Barnum simply said the child had died. Under Barnum's management, Stratton became a wealthy man. He owned a house in the fashionable part of New York. He owned a yacht, and he had a wardrobe of fine clothes. He also owned a specially adapted home on one of Connecticut's Thimble Islands, where all the furniture was to his size. When Barnum got into financial difficulty, Stratton bailed him out. Later, they became business partners. Eventually, the Strattons settled down in his wife's hometown in Massachusetts, where they built a mansion complete with custom-made small furniture. He died suddenly at the age of 45 of a stroke, and more than 10,000 people traveled to see his body lying in state. 8 years later, Barnum was buried just a few feet away. When Stratton showed up at the Harder's Opera House, they decided that they wanted the audience to see him. So what they did, they built a ramp that went right down the center aisle. That was a raised ramp, and he could strut his stuff right down that ramp and everyone could see him. He danced and sang and exhibited the same pert charisma that had won for him 3 command performances before Her Majesty, Queen Victoria, as well as the dinner and reception at the White House tendered him by the President Lincoln. The Opera House had a seating capacity of 700. Its stage was equipped with gas footlights and a rolled curtain. The scenery slid back and forth in grooves. From the ceiling of the auditorium hung 2 massive crystal chandeliers at the magnificence of which theater goers of those days marveled. This white building is a Harder Opera House, but as we zoom in here, you'll see something different. You'll see the signage on the top of the Harder Opera House is a little different now. It no longer says Harder Opera House, it says Bijou Theater. At some point, Harder Opera House went out of business. I imagine it had a lot to do with the City Opera House on Military Street. I don't think the city was big enough to have two opera houses. So as this news article says, two fellows from Detroit came in and were going to do great things, making a theater out of it, the Bijou Theater, and they had a lease for 4 years. The first act there was Santinelli, the master of hypnotism. The second act there was a variety of people there, you can read them yourself. And the third act, the theater closed down. This must have been the most short-lived theater in the history of Port Huron. Well, this video ran a little long, but you know me, I don't want to leave anything out. So join me in my next video and we'll go across the bridge and look at the north side and see what theaters are there.